It's no secret that Ukraine has upped its long-range game in 2026. 697 targets hit with deep strikes during the first 6 months of the year, costing Russia $6.1 billion in the process. Show us that. But do you know what has been a big secret? Some of the drones that Ukraine has been using for those strikes. Now the secret is no more. In a stunning revelation, several British media outlets have revealed that the UK is supplying drones that Ukraine has been using to take out key targets. For the first time in history, the UK has droned Russia into oblivion. This is a special delivery to Putin from the UK, and Ukraine are the couriers. In an August 16th report, The Times revealed that long-range drones made by 2 UK companies have not only been supplied to Ukraine, but are actively being used in some of the most important deep strikes that Ukraine is carrying out. This is a first-time event. Ukraine has used the UK's Storm Shadow missiles to attack Russia in the occupied territories and border regions before, but never drones, at least not until now. And what's more, this isn't something that's only just started happening. Ukraine has been using drones made in the UK to strike Russia for at least 6 months. The Independent adds. Nobody knew this until after the fact, and those British drones have been busy. They've been involved in some of Ukraine's most important strikes. Oil refineries, which are one of Ukraine's most common targets, are being hit by the UK's drones. The Independent confirms that British drones have been used to hit at least 2 refineries, in Volgograd and Yaroslavl. There may be others, but neither the UK nor Ukraine is talking. Still, it's clear that the UK is now involved in a 2026 refinery campaign that has seen Ukraine hit all 11 of Russia's largest refineries, impacting facilities that are jointly responsible for turning around 156 million tons of crude oil into usable products, such as gasoline and diesel, per year. These refinery strikes have played a huge role in causing a massive fuel shortage in Russia, as Ukraine used its attacks to take out 42% of Russia's refining capacity by early July. We thought that Ukraine was using its own drones for these strikes. Now we know that the UK's drones were involved in some of these attacks. The strike against the Volgograd refinery alone targeted a facility that processes 14.8 million tons of oil per year. There may be other refinery strikes. However, the other revelation to come from The Times and The Independent is that the UK's drones have also been used for attacks near Moscow, specifically focusing on logistics hubs inside Russia. Anybody who's been paying attention to what's happening to Russia's domestic logistics right now will conclude that this can only mean one thing. The UK has been helping Ukraine to squash some Wildberries. The company, which is often referred to as Russia's version of Amazon, became a target for Ukraine in July due to its importance to Russia's logistics and economy, as well as the fact that Wildberries platformed vendors selling equipment that could be used in the war against Ukraine. And Ukraine hasn't held back with its strikes. According to United 24 Media, Ukraine had knocked 7 of Wildberries' 10 largest logistics hubs out of operation as of August 16th, forcing the owners of the e-commerce platform and Russia's economy onto their collective knees. DW adds that the cost of these strikes to Wildberries has been immense. It reports that as much as $5.7 billion worth of products have gone up in smoke as Wildberries' warehouses all over Russia have burned. The total cost to the company, when accounting for repairs, compensation, and every secondary cost associated with Ukraine's strikes, is now estimated to be around $9 billion and growing. Just as with the refinery strikes, we assume that the drones being sent to pick apart Wildberries' facilities were Ukrainian-made. Most were. But now we know not all. The UK has played its part with at least 2 types of drones that Ukraine has been using for months. All of these revelations come on the back of Ukraine carrying out one of its largest attacks against Russia yet. During an overnight attack into August 16th, Ukraine sent 822 drones into Russia, around 600 of which were aimed at Moscow, the BBC says. Another Wildberries warehouse was hit in Moscow, and Ukraine also did damage via attacks targeting Rostov and Belgorod. Were the UK's drones used in these attacks? We may never know. However, we don't have to rely on UK outlets alone to confirm that UK drones have been touching down on targets inside Russia. The Kremlin itself has confirmed that it's happening in frothingly angry reports. The BBC reports that Russia's Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has slammed the UK for providing components for drones that have been used in attacks against Russian territory. She claims that these components were found in drones used in a strike against a fuel depot in Rostov, revealing yet more types of targets that Ukraine uses UK drones to hit. Russia is fuming about all of this. As for the UK and Ukraine, both are playing coy. Officially, none of this is happening at all. As Crypto Briefing points out, the use of UK drones in attacks against Russian targets hasn't been confirmed by either the UK or Ukraine. This is deliberate. A sort of strategic ambiguity designed to keep Russia guessing while minimizing the diplomatic tension that will be caused by the UK confirming that it's helping Ukraine to drone strike Russia into oblivion. The UK is taking a page out of the Russian playbook here. Conduct strikes in ways that allow for plausible deniability, and you leave your enemy impotent and furious. Russia has been doing that for years with hybrid attacks, including many targeting the UK. Now the UK is getting its own back with drones. The UK and Ukraine may not be willing to confirm that British drones are being sent into Russia, but they are. And this is what we know about them. According to The Independent, Ukraine is using at least 2 drones that originated in the UK. The first is the Nyan One Way Effector drone. Built in Wiltshire by a subsidiary of BAE Systems named Callan Lentz, this drone has been tested extensively in the UK before heading into Ukraine. On July 3rd, the Royal Navy carried out a first-time test from a warship using a launcher that was installed on the ship's deck. The Royal Navy also confirms that the drone has undergone extensive testing on land and that it has autonomous features. What those features are haven't been confirmed, though we can assume that the Nyan is capable of automatically tracking and targeting whatever it needs to hit. This isn't a drone designed to strike deep into Russia. It has a 2.9-meter wingspan and a range of about 240 kilometers, which makes it ideal for attacks in the occupied territories and against Russia's border regions. The Nyan is confirmed to have been used in at least one strike against Volgograd, which adds fuel to the fire when it comes to the potential for UK drones to have been used in Ukraine's August 16th attack. After all, Belgorod was a target in that strike, and the Nyan is tailor-made for targets at that sort of range. The drone isn't a powerhouse, it has a maximum takeoff weight of about 75 kilograms, and it's only capable of carrying a 20-kilogram payload, Militani reports. However, the drone is modular, allowing for different equipment to be installed on it depending on mission requirements, and it can hit a top speed of 222 km per hour, making it difficult to stop when flying quite literally under the radars of Russia's air defense system. As for the second drone, this is where things get a little murky. The other drone the UK has provided for Ukraine is far more mysterious than the first. All we know so far is that it's manufactured in factories in the UK. It has a range of over 965 kilometers, and it's launched using a catapult system, meaning Ukraine doesn't need a runway to get it up into the air. That catapult also allows Ukraine to send several of its second type of drone into the skies in quick succession, allowing for the quick creation of a swarm that then descends upon Russia. Beyond that, neither the drone nor the company making it has been named, reportedly for security reasons. Ukraine and the UK wants to keep this drone quiet. The longer that Russia has to spend guessing, the more effective this unnamed drone will be against Russia's air defenses. Frankly, Russia should have seen this coming. Though the UK hasn't officially confirmed the use of its drones on Russian territory, it hasn't been shy about providing Ukraine with the weapons it needs to do some serious damage. Back in April, the UK's Ministry of Defence declared that its commitment to supporting Ukraine was unwavering, as it outlined what the UK will be providing to Ukraine in 2026. "We are committed to providing the equipment Ukraine needs to defend itself against Putin's illegal invasion," the ministry spokesperson declared before adding, "This includes over 150,000 drones this year, cutting-edge Stone Cloak devices that hinder Russian air defenses, and innovative low-cost cruise missiles." Before we move on to what UK-made drones being used against Russia means in the wider context of the war, that mention of Stone Cloak devices deserves a little more attention. Stone Cloak is a very clever piece of equipment. An electronic warfare or EW system, Stone Cloak is designed to be installed directly onto drones. The device is about the size of a tablet computer, and it creates electronic interference that makes it hard for air defense systems to track and engage whatever aircraft the Stone Cloak is installed on, sort of like chaff or air defense targeting systems. Why do we mention this? Think back to what we said about the Nyan drone earlier. It's modular and can be equipped with whatever is needed for the mission it's sent to complete. We know that Ukraine has Stone Cloak devices. It's not too much of a jump to assume that some of these devices may have been installed onto Nyan drones that attack Belgorod and other targets in the border and occupied regions. The pieces align. A UK-made drone loaded with a UK-made EW system striking Russian targets sends a clear message to Putin. The UK's military ties with Ukraine are only getting stronger. Russia is worried, and it should be. Those ties are both powering up Ukraine and ensuring that the UK is prepared for a fight that it thinks Putin is gearing up to start. But before we go deeper into both of those issues, this is a reminder that you're watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, then now is the time to hit the button and enable notifications. So those ties we mentioned. What we're seeing with the UK-made drones being used to attack Russia is the latest indication that the ties between Ukraine and the UK are getting so strong that they're becoming very worrying for the Kremlin. And there's so much more, as those ties have been developing for years now. Right from the start of the invasion, the UK has been one of the top providers of military aid to Ukraine. The UK government says that the country has provided almost $34 billion to Ukraine so far, most of which has come in the form of military support, though Ukraine has also received over $7.5 billion in non-military aid, such as fiscal guarantees and bilateral commitments. That's a pretty substantial showcase of support right off the bat, but the relationship between the UK and Ukraine goes so much deeper, 100 years deeper. Back in January 2025, the UK and Ukraine signed the 100-year partnership agreement. Under this agreement, both nations have committed to closer defense and industrial cooperation and the creation of rapid response mechanisms. The UK has also tied itself to providing Ukraine with a minimum of about $4 billion in assistance every year until the end of the 2030-31 financial year. After that, the UK says it will provide aid for as long as needed to support Ukraine. In other words, if the war still rages by 2031, the UK's support won't stop coming. But perhaps more important than the actual commitments made is the message sent by this agreement. This isn't just the UK saying it's going to help Ukraine. It's the UK telling Putin that Ukraine is going to exist a century from now. In other words, you are going to fail in your efforts to transform Ukraine from a sovereign nation into part of Russia, Mr. Putin. We can keep going with the ties. Other examples include the UK and Ukraine signing a $27 million deal in January 2026, right on the anniversary of the 100-year commitment, to help Ukraine with energy infrastructure repairs following Russia's brutal campaign against Ukraine's energy infrastructure during the winter. On August 10th, Euromaidan Press reported that the UK is gearing up to allow Ukraine to purchase weapons made in the UK using $70 billion loan money that Ukraine received from the European Union. That's an important step. We often refer to Europe as a collective, and the UK is indeed part of Europe, but it isn't part of the European Union and hasn't been for several years in the wake of the 2016 Brexit vote. So we're not only seeing another level of UK's support of Ukraine here, but also more cooperation between the two separate entities of the UK and the European Union, which can only spell more good things for Ukraine's future on the collaboration front. And to cap it all off, just a couple of months before this loan announcement was made, the UK revealed that it was flight testing a trio of long-range systems designed for both the UK itself and to help Ukraine in its fight against Russia. The specifications for these systems are revealing. The UK wanted a weapon that could travel at least 500 kilometers, carry a warhead weighing at least 225 kilograms, and reach a top speed of over 600 kilometers per hour. That mystery drone we mentioned as part of the pair that Ukraine is now using against Russia has a range above 500 kilometers, 965 to be exact. Could that second drone be the result of one of those June tests? Again, we may never know, because the UK and Ukraine aren't revealing much. However, as with the Stone Cloak and Nyan drone speculation, the pieces do appear to fit together fairly well. There's one thing that we can conclude for certain now that UK drones are flying into Russia. The UK has transformed from being a thorn in Putin's side into a major threat, all due to its support of Ukraine. Russia has already been casting the UK as a primary villain in the narrative that the Kremlin concocts around the Ukraine invasion. The Guardian notes that Russia has, at various times, accused the UK of planning drone strikes against Russian airfields, enabling what Russia calls terrorist attacks inside Russia, and even playing some sort of role in the terrible concert attack at Crocus City Hall in Moscow, which left at least 145 dead and over 500 injured. The last one in particular is nonsense, but it shows just how far Russia is willing to go to cast the UK as the villain in Putin's story. And all of this narrative twisting is happening because the UK has been as steadfast in its support of Ukraine as it claims to be. So what we're seeing with the UK helping Ukraine to drone strike Russia into oblivion is simple. If Putin wants to make the UK the villain in this skewed Russian narrative, then the UK is going to play the best villain it can be. And it has reason to slot into that role. Some think that Russia is creeping ever closer to starting a war in the UK than you might think. In June, Sir Richard Knighton, who is the Chief of the Defence Staff of the United Kingdom, said that the UK faces the highest threat from Russia that it's faced since the Cold War era. He calls now the most dangerous period for the UK in several decades, adding that Russia has been crossing lines with hybrid attacks that include assassination attempts, cybercriminality and sabotage. This is the most dangerous time I have known in my working life, and it's important that society and all of us recognize and understand that. And that may mean that we need to make different choices and different priorities, Knighton declared. Different choices and different priorities may translate into give Ukraine drones that it can use to hurt Russia before Russia can hurt the UK. It may also translate into some of the interesting steps that the UK has either taken or is considering taking to deal with the Russian threat. For instance, February saw the UK deploy a carrier strike group led by HMS Prince of Wales into North Atlantic and High North waters as part of Operation Firecrest. There's only one reason that the UK has sent a carrier so far north. It wants Putin to know that it's ready to defend itself and its NATO allies as Russia tries to expand its interests in the Arctic region. Another interesting example is currently a proposal, but could soon become policy. Earlier in August, The Telegraph revealed a UK political op-ed proposing the creation of what it calls a European Confederation. That proposal matters because of what it would mean for Ukraine. In return for renewed access to the European Union's single market in the wake of Brexit, the UK could offer to cover Ukraine with its nuclear umbrella, giving Ukraine a countermeasure to Russia's nuclear threat. What all of this means is very simple. UK drones flying into Russia are just the start. The UK wants to make Russia pay for everything that it's done to Ukraine, but it also wants the Kremlin to know that Russian attempts to intimidate through hybrid warfare aren't going to work. If Putin wants a fight, the UK has already taken its gloves off and is getting ready to turn that fight into a brawl. It may all start with providing drones to Ukraine, but if the likes of Knighton are right and Russia goes further than it already has, then the UK is going to be ready, standing side by side with Ukraine and its NATO allies. And speaking of NATO allies, the UK isn't the only country that's giving Putin plenty to worry about. Poland isn't happy with Russia after a Kh-101 cruise missile crashed deep in Polish territory. So Poland is planning something massive of its own in return. What is it? You can find out by watching our video, but before you go, don't forget to subscribe to The Military Show and enable notifications so you don't miss any of our videos. And thank you for watching.